Welcome to Wilder Nottinghamshire. I'm Rob Carlyle. In today's podcast, we're going to be looking at probably our most misunderstood group of Nottinghamshire animals. We're going to debunk myths. We're going to take part in innovative conservation tasks. We're going to amaze you with interesting facts. And to retain your interest until the very end, we've engaged Nottinghamshire's leading bat impersonator. Oh, I've given it away now. Today, Wilder Nottinghamshire goes batty. We'll begin this podcast by giving you a little bit of a context, really. In the spring of last year, we invited John from the Nottinghamshire Bat Group to come along and set up a static bat detector in the garden, just to see what kind of bat activity we'd got here. Not expecting much. When he came back, I said to him, "Look, I'm sorry, John, the weather's been so poor, there'll be hardly any data at all." But he surprised us and said, "No, when I look at the data that's been collected, the detector's only been active for half the time because so much bat activity has been detected, it ran out of memory." Well, that absolutely astonished us. And he talked there about there being common and soprano pipistrelle bats, Dorbenton's bats, brown long-eared bats, Leisler's bats, noctule. Fascinating collection of bats. We had no idea we're here at all. And this then led us to sighting 18 bat boxes in the garden with the help of Nottinghamshire Bat Group. And we then built hopefully a friendship with these great volunteers. And today we're coming together to try something a little bit different to support bats in our garden. Hopefully you'll find much more about it in the podcast today. We begin by talking to Nottinghamshire Bat Group Chair, John Parker. So John, how long have bats been around?
I think we can track them back at least 50 million years. I think they're thought to be one of the first sort of emerging mammals after the extinction of the dinosaurs. I don't think we've got any fossils that show that halfway state. I don't know what they actually evolved from to become bats. So like we've got Archaeopteryx, which is halfway sort of to being a bird. I'm not aware of anything like that with bats.
Yeah, so there's a missing link at the moment that we're waiting to find.
Yes, I think so, yes.
That means that bats are even more special in that they have been around for such a great length of time and have adapted themselves to every environment that we can think of, apart from the Antarctic.
Yes.
I tell you what.
And a great variety of food sources as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fruit.
Nectar.
Blood.
Insects.
Fish.
Yes.
Oh, fascinating. John, it seems to me that bats are amongst the most overlooked parts of our wildlife. Can you think why that should be?
I think it's because they are very, very difficult to actually see. It's a dark creature that's out at night, so you're looking for black on a black background. You can't hear them echolocating because it's above our auditory range. So it's really only in the last sort of 40, 50 years that technology's come on with bat detectors. I mean, it started with old tape recorders, reel to reel, with a separate sort of microphone to record in the ultrasonic sound. So that meant that we could actually hear bats without seeing them. More recently, we've got sort of thermal cameras, so we can actually see them at night. Compared to other mammalian species, research on them was very late starting.
Yeah.
Because we can't see them, we can't hear them, difficult to find.
Fascinating, but so much more to learn. John, how many bat species do we have in Nottinghamshire?
We've got 12 in Nottinghamshire. Some are very, very rare, like Ceratine. There's one that's definitely been recorded because it was in care, and that was actually in Nottingham City.
Right.
But some of the recent static surveys, we've picked up what we think are Ceratine, but they're very difficult to tell apart from noctules and Leislers when they're in clutter, in woodlands.
Oh, right, okay.
Because they alter the type of core to get more detail, so they don't crash into trees. And it's really when they're flying in the open that it's easier to make a body.
Right. What about the most common bats that people will encounter?
Probably common pipistrelle are the most numerous in the county. closely followed by soprano pipistrelle. They tend to prefer to be near water features.
Oh, do they?
So, yeah, if there's rivers or ponds, then it's most often the soprano.
Yeah. So, bats are poorly understood, but also misunderstood. They're subject to all kinds of urban mythology. So I asked John, before we got cracking, to clear up one or two examples of misunderstandings about bats. John, people say to me, as blind as a bat. Is it true that bats are blind?
No, not at all. They think their eyesight is at least as good as ours. In fact, sometimes when you do emergence surveys, the bats that will come out early, as the pipistrelles or noctules, when they emerge, they don't always echolocate. They can see clear enough to fly. So, yes, it's sort of dusk, but why use the energy to keep shouting out to get the echolocation, to see where you're going? And because they roost there, they do know what's around, so they know what direction the flight path is in.
Mm-hmm. I was with a friend this week and we were talking bats, and can you guess? The thing she was most concerned about was the bat getting trapped in her hair. Speak to me. Is that going to happen?
It's a complete myth. Not only have they got good eyesight, they have echolocation. The last thing they want to do is to get caught up in someone's hair. If they're out and about, they're thinking about, where's my next meal coming from? So sometimes, yes, they'll fly very close to you. In fact, I think it's interesting. Sometimes if you're in a woodland and you stop and look up, you can see a little cloud of midges above you in your sort of thermal stream, perhaps, raising off your body. And I think the bats get attracted to them.
Right.
So that's sometimes, I think that's an explanation for why the bats do seem to fly quite close to you.
Yeah, yes, yeah. But that will only apply to people who are walking in woodlands. So if you're just walking around generally, the chance of a bat flying and getting trapped in your hair, nil.
I've never heard of it actually happening.
We've dispelled the myth. Thanks, John. So there you are. A couple of bat myths debunked. I've got to say, I wish that my hair was long enough for a bat to get tangled into. But on we go. OK. Bat myths busted. But I promised innovative conservation. And I hear it happening. So here we are, sawing big holes in trees. Tell us all about that then, John. What's happening?
Right, it's Britain's lacking sort of ancient woodland and old trees, and it's the old trees that have lots of features in them that bats like. You're getting lifted bark, you've got damage with tear-outs of branches, frost cracks. The bigger trees, woodpeckers have had time to peck out holes, squirrels have got drays. So, and we're short on that old ancient woodland, and we're still cutting some of it down. What we're doing, I suppose you'd say, is veterinising middle-aged trees. So we're using a chainsaw to put in features that mimic old trees we tend to find in ancient woodlands.
So you're making younger trees appear older.
Older.
Yes, yeah.
So bats in particular love old trees because it's got the features, sort of tear out branches, frost cracks, woodpecker holes, squirrel holes. Yeah. So really we're mimicking that in trees that aren't old enough to have developed those features.
And I think what's interesting for me is that this is the first time this has really been tried in Nottinghamshire, is that right?
Yes, I don't know of anywhere else where it's actually being done. There may be places. Yeah, I mean, it's been talked about sort of in the bat community at conferences, and Jim Mulholland's probably done the biggest inroad. And he's now seeing features that he's created 2 to 5 years ago.
Right.
And that's quite interesting because the trees will actually heal up. The sap sort of forms sort of ram's horns around the injury. So you have to have a fairly big entrance hole. Right. It's not going to seal up. And bats are using them, so it obviously works.
Oh, wow. So the trees are cut by the chainsaw and then they start to heal?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's good. So perhaps that will mean that there's not necessarily permanent damage to a tree. It'll try and sort itself out.
Yes, it'll sort of strengthen itself up by healing over.
Very interesting.
And some of the bigger features where they cut out wedges with a chainsaw, cut out the pointy bit of the wedge and put back in with a slot for bats to get in. And the tree actually, sort of the sap runs into the bit that you took out,
right.
And it actually joins up,
kind of
so
up to
it's
the glue.
living wood again.
Yeah. And I spoke to Nick about the kinds of places that bats may choose for their hibernation or breeding within trees, because that would help us in sighting where the chainsaw incisions would be. I'm with Nick at the moment. Nick, what are we trying to do with these trees?
So we're veterinising them, so we're trying to make features that you would naturally get, like in ancient woodlands, in younger trees.
Right, so the idea is that the bat will find these crevices and crawl into them?
Yeah, well, bats are like naturally quite inquisitive, so they're flying around all the time as they're foraging, and they naturally look for gaps and holes.
Right.
So if the features are there, hopefully they will find these features and use them.
Right.
But we're trying to create different sort of features, so some for summer roost, some for hibernation roost.
Right.
So because bats change what they want depending on the time of year.
Right, so they don't just stay in one place, they'll be moving at different seasons.
Yeah, so they have, so in the maternity season, when they have the babies, the females all come together in larger maternity roosts, and they need the temperature of the roost to be warm, so they want a south-facing aspect to maintain that temperature, because thermodynamics is really important.
Right. So in the winter they want to go into a north-facing side, do they, where it's a more constant, cooler temperature?
Constant, cooler temperature, and whereas in summer you might find them higher up in a tree canopy, you get them much lower down because the temperature is more constant nearer the ground.
Oh, right, yeah, so I can see that. You'd have more variability in the temperature up in the canopy than you would down here. Kyle, what have we been doing today?
We've been out with the Nottingham Bat Group cutting some features into trees to make that habitat, with the idea of monitoring them and seeing how they go on over the next few years.
So you've been using your chainsaw?
Yeah.
And what kind of features have you been creating?
Well, today we've cut a slot down a tree.
Yeah, sort of a vertical one, wasn't it? Yeah.
About 1 metre long down a tree.
How deep were they?
About 15 centimetres.
Right.
With an opening at the bottom. So higher up, the slot will close up over time, and then the idea being that there's a hole lower down that bats can go in and use it as a roosting feature or hibernation feature.
And one of the things that was interesting was that they're quite low down. People sort of assume that bats need to be high up, don't they?
Yeah.
But I understand that bats can take quite low features and roost in them for hibernation.
Yeah. Get bats coming out of features. Well, a foot, 2 foot off the ground.
2 foot, wow.
Pretty low.
So what we're going to do is we're going to monitor these then, aren't we?
Yeah.
Come back and see how successful this is, to see whether we can roll it out in other locations.
Yeah, I'd like to try it in different places as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. I've got to say it was a really interesting day with the team. The Bat Group went around checking the bat boxes to see what uptake there'd been, which wasn't much so far, but they have only been put up just before the start of the winter. We then went around trees in the garden, trees of 5 different species. Each were given one of these sort of long, thin, tadpole-shaped features in the tree, which we can now monitor in the months and years ahead. So a fascinating, if really cold day. Back indoors now with John. We've had quite a successful session putting fissures in trees, and now I just want to talk to John about the big things that we can do to make bat numbers, bat conservation work more effectively. John, what sort of ideas do you have about things that we can do?
Connectivity is a big thing.
Okay, explain that to us. What do we mean by connectivity?
Bats' natural habitat is woodland, though some have adapted to living in our houses, churches. Yeah. How easy is it for the bat to get from one woodland to another? They don't like crossing open areas, I guess if you're thinking you're flying and there might be a raptor up above you, you're much happier if you're near a hedgerow to get some shelter.
So that acts as a barrier for bats moving from one area to another, because they don't like passing over open ground. So if you do want to have bat populations thriving, you've got to have areas in between, motorways if you like, along which they can travel.
Yes.
And they would be hedgerows, I assume?
Hedgerows with solitary trees in, even better.
Yeah.
Not nicely trimmed hedgerows.
Right.
Ones that are perhaps taller and a bit spindly.
Yeah. I guess that they would provide cover, but also provide necessary food along the way.
Yes.
As the bats
Lots
are moving
of insects
around.
would be there.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I guess in a way that also applies to birds, because I know that, for instance, locally the marsh tits population has really fallen. And I was reading that marsh tits stay very local to where they were born, and unless there's some means of travelling along a hedgerow or through standard trees, they won't move to other habitats that might be really suitable. So I guess all of that connectivity is really key. So you'd be looking for farmers and landowners to do what then?
Yeah, reinstate partial hedgerows. A lot of the farmers' fields now, the hedgerows have degenerated. Yeah, it's easier to put up a bit of fencing than replant hedgerows. Yeah, so really sort of fill them in and make them nature corridors. You know, instead of farming right up to the edge, leave 2 or 3 metres, of longer grasses. You've got sort of a variety of habitats then. And some of it can benefit the farmers. Sort of the bats are natural predators of course. A lot of the pests that farmers have. So if you actually encourage the bats in the area, pipistrelles, for example, can eat between 2,000 and 3,000 gnats in a night. So that's a lot better than pesticides.
Wow. So if you've got a local colony of, say, pipistrelle bats, there they are ploughing through the air eating 2,000 or 3,000 gnats a night. That is amazing, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, for a tiny creature. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. We've prevailed on Michael Walker, the Notts Wildlife Trust Nature Recovery Manager, to come and join us one Saturday morning. We talked bats. But first of all, we went and looked at the work that Kyra and the team had been doing.
Well, I've seen, as we walk round, I've seen all the bat boxes that have been put up recently, which are just replicating natural fissures in trees. Most of your trees are young for trees. They haven't got those natural splits and cracks that you'd see in a veteran oak in Sherwood Forest or something like that. So you've had cut. One really good one I saw was a sort of a long vertical, must have been 3 foot long, quite deep in. It should heal a little bit at the top and just leave a natural hole. And you see that in nature. They look obviously artificially created at the minute, but give it a few years and they'll probably look very much like the splits and cracks that you see in trees. And we always think that it's only these big old veteran trees, big old feature trees in the landscape that bats would use because of all the splits and cracks. But one of the best roosts of bats I've seen in a tree was a young sycamore. Couldn't have been more than a 6-inch diameter trunk with a split fairly low down to the ground, lower down to the ground than the one that you've got. And that was a roost of Natras bats in there. So yeah, they can use these nice features of all sorts of splits and cracks. Old woodpecker holes, they'll get used. There was a roost of in a wood not far from where I live on the Trent. A couple of old woodpecker holes that bats were using in very, very high trees. We never quite narrowed down what species it was because we never were very successful at getting a recording on them. Right. One of them was definitely being used by Dull Benton's bats, close to the river species you would expect. That was old woodpecker holes. But yeah, the splits and the chainsaw cracks that you've done look like they're going to be, hopefully, very effective.
What we did when the Bat Group came was make low features in trees because we'd only got one arborist. We didn't feel we could safely go up into the trees with one arborist. We needed to have a second one there. So this group, this 5 or 6 that we've created so far are low down, but we're hoping that we can come back and do some higher up. But as you suggest there, it's then monitoring how successful they'll be, because we can, if a feature is at our eye height, we can see what's happening in it. But when it's up in a tree, then you do require somebody to go up into the tree,
or just to watch it in an evening with a gin and tonic, and stare at the tree.
That would work for me.
Work for you, wouldn't it? Night vision camera. Sounds like a perfect evening to me.
Let's do it.
Yes. It's really easy to miss a feature that a bat would use. So a lot of the trees we've been seeing today, a bit higher up, there might just be that little temporary sort of shelter, or just a very discreet entrance into what is quite a large cavity that's hidden. And as the ones that you've cut into the trees, they'll start to rot upwards probably. The tree will heal round, and you'll get these perfect little niches for bats just to tuck in behind. Yeah, it's going to be quite good to see what happens there.
So coming back to what we'd spoken about on untidiness, some of that applies to trees, doesn't it? Because we've had a branch tear off a tree.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps in the past you would have thought, well, we perhaps need to get an arborist in and tidy that up. But of course, if there's a tear in the tree, that may eventually lead to sort of fissures in the tree and cavities that bats or invertebrates can choose to use. So I think in a way, coming back to the untidiness thing, if we can leave branches torn, holes and things like that, then that's going to benefit wildlife generally, as well as bats particularly.
It will, and probably the temptation is to clean up that wound, as it were, to stop infection getting in or rot getting in. But if it's a tree that isn't a particular very valuable specimen of a tree that you've been nurturing, you would probably want to do that. I think that there's no better way for a limb to come off than to snap off, because it creates all of these nooks and crannies. It allows rot to start to get in, for the invertebrates, to beetles and beetle larvae to chew through, and
I think
woodpeckers to feed on.
I think as well, when people hear the word rot, there's a bit of a sort of amber warning light flashing in their head, isn't there? Because you think, oh, my tree is rotting, it'll therefore collapse any minute. But rots and trees go together naturally, don't they? And trees can cohabit with rot for much of their lives, can't they?
Well, some species, things like an open-grown oak, it could live 900 years, and they say it takes 300 years for it to grow, and 300 years for it to thrive, and then 300 years for it to die when it's got all these rot holes and things in it, and splits and cracks.
So here's another thing: rot is good.
It can be. That's why I said perhaps not if it's on one of your fine specimen.
Oh, absolutely.
trees. Perhaps not one of your well looked after birches, Rob.
And I need to say to our podcast listeners here that I am being teased a little bit by Michael, because I did disclose in a weakened moment that I do wash the trunks of my Himalayan birch, and I know that's excessive. You won't think well of me for that.
They look beautiful.
Very good. After an exhausting walk around the garden, looking at the features in trees and talking, we sat together with coffee and cake, sitting with Jill and with Alison. And we talked about different aspects of bats and moved on to that distinctive thing about bats, which is the call of a bat. I know what you're now asking. What does a bat's song sound like? So I pressed Michael Walker to demonstrate. Bless him.
Most bats sing in some way or another, or make a call to advertisement.
Go on, give us your best. Give us your best impression.
It's a long time since I've listened to the recordings of Nottinghamshire have got from Collick Park.
you don't sit of an evening and you put them onto your hi-fi.
It's a sort of a trill, and then a single call, and then a upward rising trill. So it's sort of a dilly dilly chick dilly dilly. It's sort of that kind of noise.
Look, I know I'm speaking as his agent now, but don't you think that with a little work, and if he can channel his inner Tom Jones, that impression could take us right to the top of Britain's Got Talent?
Dilly dilly chick dilly dilly.
Can you hear the magpies? They really agree. They're going mad for it. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is things that folk can do to encourage bats in their gardens?
To encourage any wildlife into a garden, I think the number one thing you can do is have a pond. As big a pond as you can manage, but it doesn't have to be huge. Not too many dogs that we can hear.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably going to discourage them. Yeah, any water, because water brings a whole different dimension into a garden from a wildlife point of view. But from a bat point of view, it's providing them food in terms of the insects that are going to be emerging from the water. Because even the smallest pond, I'm sat next to a barrel pond here, a full-size barrel pond, but there'll be insects, there'll be little midges and might even be dragonfly larvae.
So we've got ponds.
We've got ponds, all sorts of structure in your garden. Again, you're gardening for insects, you're gardening for food. So there's many different types of flowers that have perhaps an evening scent, things that will attract moths and other pollinating insects that will be feeding at night, which is mainly moths, isn't it, or the micro moths. And
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite our audience to tell us some night-scented plants that will attract insects. Alison.
Evening primrose.
Jill.
Honeysuckle.
Michael.
the tobacco plant,
Oh, Nicotiana.
that's the one.
We got there between us. That's
Yeah.
a team effort there.
Team effort. Yeah, honeysuckle's a really nice one, and obviously a beautiful one, and you can get native varieties of the native honeysuckle. It just rambles through things, so
Yeah, that has the
beautiful
advantage of the wonderful scent for us,
yeah,
and pollen and nectar source for insects.
yeah,
And then in the winter, if you don't cut it back, those wonderful berries
yeah,
that birds and insects can really enjoy.
yeah.
They're sticky, yeah.
Yeah, so you're basically gardening for insects, which provide food. You can always, if you've got the space and perhaps a tree, or you're happy to put a bat box or two on the wall of your house, provided it's not due south facing, it can get a little bit warm. But any other aspect will be used in some respect. They can be useful as well. All depends where you live. If you live in a habitat, an area where there's lots of good habitat around, there's probably plenty of roosting opportunities, but there's always a good opportunity to provide a little bit more with a box or two.
Yeah, so we've got ponds, we've got plants that attract moths and bats at night. I want to ask you about something very close to my heart, untidiness.
Untidiness.
I live it.
You love untidiness. Well, it doesn't show here. Well, again, you're talking about creating areas which are untidy. Can suggest many things, and everyone's got a different definition of untidy. But if it's lots of different types of plants growing fairly close together, going to seed, some things coming into flower, or perhaps you've got an area of uncut grass which you're letting grow. Again, it's all bringing insects in. But I think there is a way of taming the untidiness to keep it structurally untidy, but aesthetically pleasing. But again, it depends on the size of your garden. I mean, you'd probably struggle to do that on a garden your size. On a garden our size, we have a little mini meadow, which I try and keep as tidy as possible for the head gardener to appreciate. I've got piles of wood, log piles.
I guess log piles would be great for things like that. You talked about pipistrelle feeding on small midges and things like
Yeah,
that.
especially by ponds, wet wood piles, things like that, nooks and crannies, hedgehogs like that sort of thing as well. You can always timber. I've got one where we're off bats here, but I've got a log pile which is on top of an old slab which I dug a cavity under, piled logs over the top of it, and it's a little amphibian refuge in the winter.
Hibernacular.
I think we might be using. We brought the hibernacular word out. Yeah, so try and keep just a little gap. So it's a permanent feature. Just at the bottom of the garden. You don't see it. You wouldn't know it was there. You see the log piles on top, but you don't know about the multi-chamber underneath. Use some old bricks to make it all different sort of chambers underneath.
Yeah. I guess in a way, in our garden we do something similar where we make our dead hedges.
Yeah.
Which I guess above ground are multi-chambered.
Things like mice and voles and some of the ones that I've seen in your garden, and you'll get birds that use those.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
I can
Wrens,
imagine
things like
a
that.
wren taking beakfuls of moss to build, just using the structure to...
And what you don't know is what will move in. So, for instance, we were watching a Dave Goulson video, and he'd left piles of hay in his garden, hadn't he? And that had been taken over by bumblebees for a nest, hadn't it? So, yeah, all of that kind of thing has effects on wildlife. So just in case you're thinking that this podcast really is about hiding in a boot camp in which you are then presented with a list of digging out ponds and planting plants, let's just take a step back and ask Michael to tell us one or two more interesting facts about bats. Now, Michael, tell me some fascinating facts about nocturnal bats.
Fascinating facts. Well,
any facts.
Any facts. Well, they're all fascinating. You can't have a fact about bats without being interesting. They are the fastest flying bat. They're our quickest bat. Because they've got very, very narrow wings.
Right, yeah.
And they'll stoop, almost like a peregrine stoop after something. So when they're stooping down, they're fair shifting. They're probably our least manoeuvrable bat because they've got very narrow wings. They're built for speed, not built for slowness. That's why you see them generally high up in open space. They're not really an enclosed space bat. They've got the loudest call of any bat. I believe it's... well, I've been telling people for years. Modern science has probably updated this fact because I'm a bit of a dinosaur. 120 decibels when measured about 10 centimetres from its mouth, which is over the legal limit for a nightclub. So it'd be the sort of Rock City volume. Thankfully, it's above our range of hearing, but only just. So the nocturne's also our lowest frequency calling bat, and they could call down to, particularly when they're commuting, when they want long-range echolocation calls, down to about 16, 17 kilohertz, which is within the human range. Particularly younger children might hear that.
That's going to exclude me, isn't it?
Well, it excludes me as well. But otherwise, if you've got a few noctules, you wouldn't sleep at night.
Absolutely, it's hammering noises.
Low frequency sounds will go further than high frequency, that's why they're using them, but how far it would go, a couple of 100 metres, something like that perhaps.
So is that called for echolocation or communication, or in order to negotiate the space they're in?
Bit of everything. So they use them for echolocation, so they don't fly into trees and what have you. They use it for feeding, so when they're out hunting and foraging, they'll be listening back for the echoes, and as soon as they get an echo back of something that they know they can eat, down they go, and they'll be calling as they get closer and closer. They'll be calling more rapidly. Frequency tends to go up a little bit to get a bit more detail, and then got the insect and then eat it on the wing generally, and then back into what we call search phase again. Another fascinating fact, shouting incredibly loud whilst flying to get a tiny little insect that's not going to have many calories in it is probably not a sensible option, unless you could get your echolocation call for free. So every call they make, a pipistrelle might make 9 or 10 calls a second perhaps, getting faster as it gets closer to its target, produce a call on the upwing, the lift in the wings, which is the same time where air is being forced out their lungs by the upwing, and then so they're almost, by the very nature that they're flying, they're getting that echolocation effort call for
almost
free.
pumping it out.
Pumping it out,
wow. That's interesting.
That's interesting.
It really is, actually, yeah. So having pumped Michael for bat facts, we now return to our friend John. We were standing on a windy corner of the garden, but that didn't stop me pressing him for more bat facts. Go, John. We squeeze him for information about brown long-eared bats and probably take this further than he'd intended, and managed to squeeze in a little reference to Kanye West as well, just showing how down on the street we really are on this podcast. John, tell us about brown long-eared bats.
They're the third most common bat in the country, though probably under-recorded because they have the big long ears. They echolocate very quietly, sometimes get called whispering bats, and it's very interesting sort of evolution between the bat and its prey, sort of moths. The moths have developed or evolved the ability to hear the ultrasonic echolocation. So the bats had to do something about that because they were getting harder to catch.
Oh, right.
So we think they've co-evolved, and the brown long-eared have got quieter and quieter with echolocation, and the ears have got larger, very large compared to the size of the body, and they can actually hear the moths flying. So they actually have, is it tympani they call them? It's a bit like the crickets, how they make the noise.
Right, yes,
between the front and the back wing. Some of the moth species have these, and some research is thinking that might allow you to identify the species of moth by ultrasound, so they can hear that. But they can also hear them even when they've landed on leaves. They'll actually glean them off the leaves.
And that's because they can hear them breathing?
It's a possibility. Wow. I don't know.
Wow. And what I think is amazing there is that moths don't breathe in a noisy way. They don't come up with great gasping breaths like Kanye West on I'm a God. They've got little stipules, spiracles, whatever they're called. We aren't experts, are we?
Yes.
And the bat's hearing is so acute that it can hear a moth breathing. Isn't that an amazing
it's
fact?
A possibility, yes.
Wow.
How do you spell pipistrelle?
So here we go. This is Nottinghamshire Bat Group telling us the bats of Nottinghamshire with English names starting from now, A to Z. Here we go.
Barberstone.
Brants.
Brown
Common
long-eared.
pipistrelle.
Brown
Brown
long-eared.
long-eared.
Oh no.
You can say it now. Common
pipistrelle.
Daubenton's.
Lyslers.
Noctral.
Naturals before
Nocturus
nocturnal.
before nocturne.
Enthusiast pipistrelle.
Enthusiast pipistrelle.
Serotine.
17 soprano pipistrelle.
Whiskered.
Wow.
That's it, isn't it?
How many have we
Is that
got?
12?
I don't know, I wasn't counting.
I can't think.
Phew. We got there. As promised, we've debunked myths. We've taken part in innovative conservation tasks. We've amazed you with interesting bat facts. We've introduced you to Nottinghamshire's leading bat impersonator. And we've also given you a parlour game, an A to Z of Nottinghamshire's bats played at home. If you want to know more about bats in Nottinghamshire, send for our fact sheet.
Hi, I'm Professor Sarah Goodacre, Vice President of Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust. If you would like a fact sheet with more information about this podcast and action you can take for nature, please email podcast@notwt.co.uk. We'd also love you to get in touch with feedback, questions and ideas for future topics at the same address. That's podcast@notwt.co.uk.
Thanks to all those who took part in the podcast today. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Wilder Nottinghamshire. I'm Rob Carlisle. Thanks for listening. This has been a sustainable garden production in February 2026 for Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust. Our technical editor is David Heathcote. Thanks for listening. Until the next time.